Back to school night. Okay, welcome everybody. Welcome everybody joining live. Everybody here. We survived 6th grade. I know, barely, right? I was like, Mary and Mir Hashem, when we do have a school, there's no such thing as back to school night. Like, no. You know what? Like, parent-teacher conferences I get. Even though I still think that PTA can totally be done on Zoom, like there's no reason, but like the getting there at 7:30 bit is like a little rough, I think, getting into school. But okay. So welcome everybody. Welcome, hi Sarah, new, first time. She's my shul buddy, so it's very, it's like, it feels very holy, like for real. Okay, how's everybody's week? How's it going? Yeah, good. Is everybody settled in? Like I'm like going back and forth on how much I love this. Like it's not Yontif yet, but like it's also almost Yontif. Like I think I like it that we have like this space. Like we should like hold this space like sacred right now. That like it's not Yontif, even though if you're planning your menu, like that's great. But like we should just enjoy this time. Okay. So and thank you all for coming out and for always listening and focusing in class because I could not focus and we just went through like 8 teachers. Right. I had like two Hebrew. No, that's 6. Sorry. 4 English, 2 Hebrew. I can't do that. Okay. So we are going to finish Parakut Gimel tonight, and we were in the middle of learning about who? The Beinoni, right? It's funny, like I was thinking, like we were talking so much about like who the Tzaddik was, who the Rasha was, who the Beinoni is, and I think it's always, we have to just remind ourselves that like we have to understand the context of like who these characters are, and the more we understand who this Beinoni is, the more we could really understand like what our purpose is here in this world. Obviously there are a couple of tzaddikim sprinkled in here, and you might be one, but we'll find out. But the more we get to know the Beinoni, last week we were talking about the 2 sides of the Beinoni. He has on either side of him, he has the Yetzer Hara, the Yetzer Tov, and they're shoftim, they're judges. They're not the ones who are going to make the absolute decision, but they help him make the decisions. And ultimately we said that the Beinoni should never be Misya'ish because he always has who on his side? He always has Hashem on his side. So bottom line, the Beinoni will have these 2 voices. He has to know where these voices are coming from. But once he identifies the voice, he's like, oh, I've been here before. I could do this. Yeah, it was hard for me yesterday, but I have Hashem on my side, and he's going to help me get through this. Now, what we're going to try to do tonight is we're going to finish Parakut Gimel, and we're going to try to understand, like, and I think this is like one of my favorite words. Ah, hi, come in. Oh my gosh, welcome. There are chairs over here. If you don't want to sit up front, you can bring it to the back. Don't worry. Welcome. I know, like, it's hard to get out at night. Like, I'm complaining about going out to parent teachers, and then I'm like, everybody comes out here. So, Faigy, don't complain so much. The Beinoni, this is like a big word, like a big buzzword, like authenticity, right? Like everybody wants to be authentic, right? So there's this like interesting thing that comes up with the Beinoni that we always say that the Beinoni can have tzaddik-like moments, right? What about the Beinoni when can the Beinoni have tzaddik-like moments? Remember, the Beinoni is somebody who's always struggling on the inside, but presents outside like everything is perfect. And by the way, you would not know necessarily. Sometimes you can't even distinguish between a Beinoni and a tzaddik because it's only on the inside the difference, right? So what is it about the Beinoni? When can the Beinoni achieve like tzaddik-like moments?
When it's the same inside and outside.
When it's the same inside and outside, but then he would be a tzaddik.
But I'm saying it's a moment.
It's a moment, but how does he tap into that moment? When he's davening, yes, when he controls himself, when he says Shema, right? When he's in a place, specifically, let's say davening or Shema, the Beinoni can achieve this moment where it's like, oh, I feel like a tzaddik right now, okay? So now, by the way, what the Baal Tanya does here is there was a point in the beginning of Parak Aleph, I don't know if anybody remembers this, where Rabbah, who's a Tana, who's clearly a very big tzaddik, anybody who's quoted in the Gemara is a big tzaddik, right? But here we have Rabbi. He said, I don't see myself as a tzaddik. He said actually something like, and the way that we can understand this, we'll get into it inside. He said basically, I like to view myself as a Beinoni who's just davening all day. I thought it's like cute, right? Like a Beinoni it's cute. It's Tanya, it's Torah. But like a Beinoni who davens all day is likened to a tzaddik, right? If a Beinoni would just be immersed in davening the whole day, then he would have these tzaddik-like moments. So here what happens is, what the Baal Tanya explains, he explains what Rabbah is saying. He's saying that like this experience, if you are a Beinoni, and in Mitzvah Hashem we're all striving to be Beinonim, then you can have these tzaddik-like reprieves when you're davening all day. So he was just using this as a way to kind of like explain, according to Tanya, what this idea of like when you're davening all day, what you can achieve. Okay, so davening all day. Now here's the question, and this is, I think, where the authenticity comes in, okay? If you can get tzaddik-like moments when you daven, okay, and maybe I'm like, I don't know if the word is like touching it up this way, but like let's say you do that, then it's like, but then are you really like a tzaddik? Do you know what I mean? Like, what does the Beinoni feel like? What does it mean? Why are you nodding? Because like, it's like you're faking
It's
it.
like, yeah,
It's not real, right? It's like, it's almost like, okay, I want to be like a tzaddik, so I'm just going to be davening all day, and I'm going to go into that space where I can just be one, and I could just be a tzaddik. It almost feels like it's not real. So what we're going to try to tackle tonight is understanding what this realness is, right? How do we say something that's real in Hebrew? Something that's emes, right? What is that? Emes is truth, right? Emes, by the way, is the midah of what? Anybody know who that midah is aligned with? The midah of Emes? Which of like the Yaakov, right? Avram is often associated with Chesed, which is on the right side. Yitzchak is associated with Gevurah on the left side. Yaakov is Emes, right? What do we know, by the way, about the word Emes? Letters. It stands on its own, right? The letters, bless you. The letters Aleph, Mem, Saf, by the way, like very cool, right? They actually, anybody remember this from school? It's like, I remember learning like Sheker, Ein Lo Reglayim. That like, if you would spell out Sheker, right? Like Shin on the bottom, it's like a point. Kuf, also, it can't stand on anything. And Resh is also just one point. It's just floating. Ms is like stands on solid ground, right? The Aleph can firmly stand. The Mem can firmly stand. The Saf also firmly stands on one line. And also, the letters of Ms are Aleph, Mem, Saf. Aleph is the beginning of the Aleph Beis. Saf is the, and the middle of the Aleph Beis is Mem. So it's emes is like, it's total, complete, it's truth, it's something that's very real. And that's kind of what we're going to try to understand in tonight's class about what the Beinoni, how the Beinoni can achieve realness, even though sometimes we feel like he's faking it. Because, right, we always said, like, fake it till you make it. It's like, oh, it's the whole idea of impulse control, right? It's like control yourself, control yourself, control yourself to the point. Is everything okay? Yeah. Oh. I've been there, done that. Sorry. So the idea of MS within a Beinoni sometimes can feel like it's not MS, right? Why can a Beinoni feel like? Can anybody think of an example of like why a Beinoni would feel like, oh, this is not true?
their actions are different than how they feel inside. Like that feels fake.
That feels very fake, right? Like, it's like you could pull it together for a moment or a few moments or maybe even an hour because like somebody's watching you, but then like you go home and then you burst and you're like, oh, really, I'm not a Beinoni. But a perfect Beinoni would always hold it together, but it would also lead you to like feel bad about yourself. You're like, oh, if I can't always do this, then it can't be true, right? So we want to understand, how does the Beinoni grapple with this idea of that on the outside, he has to present like somebody, but on the inside, he's really, really struggling. And I think that the whole concept of authenticity is really what it's at. Like, everybody's like, oh, let's say on social media, everybody's like, oh, I'm presenting like everything's perfect, but you all just caught me in a very harried moment of like, oh my goodness, I just came back from school and I didn't set up and I need to change and I need to put on my Tanya dress and like the candles and like Estie's helping, right? So it's like, that is not who I really present. I present like, oh, I have this all together and like everything is perfect. So how do we grapple with that, and how does that not dishearten you, and how does that help your avoda? Okay, so anybody have any ideas before we go into Tanya? Any thoughts on that? I feel like it's a very, like, to be real, your real self. Like, when do you feel like the most like you could just be real?
I feel like when you're not judging, it helps you be real.
I like that.
Give yourself grace.
Give yourself grace.
Have
Right.
an opportunity to mess up and fix it.
Right. And also, like,
And own up to it.
right. I think owning up to it is definitely going to help like that. Okay,
Also,
yeah.
like, we look at, like, our Gedolim and, like, Torah, and, like, you see the struggles that people have gone through.
Right.
And going through it. Like, if Moshe Rabbeinu struggled, like, stars for them. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like,
Right, clearly.
So, like, that, like, is shown to us is that, like, even Tzaddikim, they struggled and then, you know,
Right.
grew from it.
And the more we practice it, the better we get at it, and then the more real we can be. I always feel like if you have to like go on vacation with like somebody who like you're not such good friends with, I don't know if anybody ever gets into this situation where like you just like you're with those people and you're like, this is not so much fun. Like, I just want to be my crazy self. Like, you know, I don't want to be like pretending that I'm like this. Like, no, this is how I always act, right? That's kind of what the Benoni wants to feel like. He wants to tap into like his real self, but do it in a very real, honest way. Okay, so let's try to understand it. If anybody's following along, I know some people asked online. This is like towards the end, section 6 of the Benoni. So it says the Benoni's authentic worship. So what is it? It says, and this is from Mishlei. I love Mishlei. There's just like some really like good lines over there. And that's like all these like proverbs that we have nowadays. That's actually the English translation of Mishlei. Comes from Shlomo Melech. And he was the smartest person. What is it? Uchsiv sfas emes tikon la'ad ve'ad ariga lashon sheker. That the pasuk says in Mishlei, it says, truthful lips endure forever, but a lying tongue lasts only a moment. Okay, so now, can you think in your mind, maybe the Benoni's lying? Maybe he's not really like that kind of person, but because of his impulse control, he's always controlling it to do it. So since the Benoni only feels love for Hashem, let's say like when he's davening or when he's saying Shema, then he leaves, then he goes into business and he makes whatever, some decision that he shouldn't really be making, that's not necessarily aligned with Hashem, that doesn't prove that he loves Hashem, then how could you say that he loves Hashem? You're like, I only love Hashem, I love Hashem when I'm in shul, I love Hashem on Rosh Hashanah, but then Hashem throws me, a difficult situation, all of a sudden I don't love Hashem anymore, and then I lose it and I don't have control. Then is your love for Hashem in the shul emes, or is everything really fake? Does that make sense? Do you understand this question? It's like the idea is that truth does stand forever. Okay, so what is truth lasts forever, but a lying tongue lasts only a moment. By the way, Shazia was talking about this, and I think that like it's so important for people who like have like little white lies. We talk about this sometimes. Like you end up when you say the truth, you don't have to remember all the facts. But when you're lying, you have to remember every single detail. Because it changes. The truth stands forever. The truth lasts forever. Lying or not truth is fleeting. It goes away. But to the Benoni's advantage, if he does mess up, like Mary was saying, then it's like, okay, own up to it and weiter, move on. Don't wallow in that thing. But truth, anything that's for true really stands forever, and something that's a moment doesn't. So then how does that work with the Benoni? If the Benoni is, on the outside, he looks like everything is good, but on the inside, he's really, really struggling, then how is that truth? It must be that only the tzaddik experiences truth. Because the tzaddik is true through and through. Everything he sees, everything he feels, is all aligned to Hashem. All his actions, everything he does, is all about Hashem. Everything he thinks about is about Hashem. The Benoni not. So then the Benoni is not truth. So he's not experiencing emes. And then he's not really authentic. And this whole thing maybe doesn't really... Like to me, when I was like trying to wrap my mind around, I'm like, yeah, the Benoni is like really just tricking himself. Does anybody else think that? Yeah.
So I just looked back, I sent you a thing a few weeks ago. Instead of saying fake it till you make it, it's act like the person you want to become.
Right.
That's the mindset.
That's the mindset. And the Baal Tanya gives the Benoni so much chizuk. This is actually the only time that the Baal Tanya speaks in first person, like in, what's it called? Like first person, when he says me, like I, and he gives the Benoni so much chizuk. Because really, you could say the Benoni is like, oh, I love Hashem when everything is good, and I love Hashem when I'm davening, and I love Hashem when Yom Noraim, but like, after that, like, no. Like, I need to go take care of this, I don't want to call the Rav about my kashrus questions, I think everything is fine in my kitchen, like, he'll cover that up, but you can't be true if you're feeling one way on the outside and acting another way. So he says like this, V'hareini, and he's saying himself, Korei. He says, I also, he's literally talking about himself, V'ahavasam u'v'svilasam, Gam kein sfas emes tikon la'ad. He's saying that I also consider the love that the Benoni feels during his prayers just as relatively genuine and emestic, categorically genuine and truthful, like that line of that the truthful lips last forever, like the one from Sfas emes tikon la'ad va'ad ariga lashon sheker. That the idea of that truthful lips last forever, but a lying tongue only lasts a moment. He's saying that the Benoni, his truth that he has, his emes that he experiences, is a relative truth. I do this all the time. Like I like test kids. That's what I do. It's like my other job as a school psychologist. And like we always, like kids are not doing well in the test, but then we always say like, well, they have a relative strength in reading comprehension. Their relative strength is like very low, but everything else was extremely low. So for them, that's a relative strength, right? That's what he says here. That's what the Baal Tanya says about the Benoni. He says that it's a relative strength. Look at that person's growth chart. You know, my kids also growth hormones. Like they always say, like, well, they fell off their, you know, bless you. Like my kids might not be on the chart, but on their own growth chart, they're growing. Like my doctor always jokes, like on the Blumstein growth chart, they are actually very tall. And I was like, huh. But they're not on the chart. But in their chart, they're good. It's the same thing. The Baal Tanya is saying that I believe that even though, yes, there is a truth that the Yaakov, MS, Tiferes, Tzaddikim experience, but there's a truth that the Beinonim experience also. And you shouldn't feel that, and you shouldn't think that they're not being authentic, and you shouldn't think it's faking it. It's actually, if they connect in that moment, that's a relative truth for them. That's MS. And as long as they're continuously trying, it is an eternal truth. It really is. And yes, you can say from here to tomorrow that truth has to be through and through, and it has to make sense for everything. But the Baal Tanya is vouching for the Benoni and saying, no, that for them it also is. Something just like an interesting tidbit that I heard from Shais Taub is that, you know, like in, I don't know if people do this, they say like the pasuk of their name in Shemona Esrei. I recently just found out that I was saying the wrong one for years, and I just got a new one because I was saying Faiga, my name Faiga Rivka. So Rivka I had right, but Faiga I was doing Faiga with a hey. I just found out my pasuk. You're are you an Aleph in the end or no?
I am a hey.
So what's your pasuk?
Yeah, I have by heart because I used to say Piskuli, but it's not.
I say Piskuli, and it's not right. It's wrong. I know. It's like Pison, Pisos, and I don't know. And then I look at my phone. Something about like candles and lighting.
Yeah.
But if anybody doesn't know their name, now you should learn your pasuk because basically, and it's fine. Basically, this is the Baal Tanya's pasuk that he would say this was his name. His name is Shneur Zalman, so it starts with a shin and starts with a nun. And basically, every single day, 3 times a day, when he would say Shemona Esrei, he would say this pasuk of Sfas. His name is Shneur, right? Sfas emes tikon la'ad va'ad arigal lashon sheker. That he would vouch for Beinonim in every single time he davened Shemona Esrei and saying that their truth is also a real truth. That don't think that you're faking it. Don't think that you don't feel inauthentic. Don't be discouraged. Because if you can muster up the strength to face another day and control yourself more and more, then it's your truth. It's also your truth. So I think it's like a very deep thing that like, the Benoni always loves Hashem. And even though sometimes it looks like he doesn't love Hashem because of the inside turmoil that he has inside of him, really he always does. And the idea is that like, I think that we have to all understand that in terms of tzaddikim, their truth is obviously a whole truth, but actively wanting to work on the truth is also your growth chart of truth. Okay? Yeah.
Coming out of the black and white thinking and moving into the gray, which is living a healthy life, and that allows for small movements upwards and sometimes a step backwards to go up.
Right. Like, you know, when I was listening to this class, the whole class, I listened to Shais Taub. That's really how, a lot of times, how I chaz and I prepare. And like, somebody in the room was saying like, well, we always learned that once you put words out there, they last forever. So why are you saying that sheker doesn't last forever and MS is forever? You know that example of like the pillow? And then you like pop it, and then all the things, whatever. So Shais Taub was like, that is not a Chabad mashal, like at all. Like, don't fall for that. The idea of, yeah, exactly what Mary's saying, like step out of the black and white idea of what you think truth is, and understand that within your growth journey, you can also grow. So I think it's very comforting for it. And the way that he explains it, he said, I also consider their love during tefillos just, and it says relatively genuine, but categorically genuine. And on the level of truthful lips endure forever, he says that since the Nefesh Elokis always has the ability to arouse and make you make the right decision, which we have. We have a Nefesh Elokis inside of us that always wants to make the right decision. Therefore, whatever you feel during tefillah and whatever you feel during Shema is really who you are. And you're just going to keep growing. You're just going to keep making those small steps. Okay, so now let's understand. Does that make sense? Yeah?
It's I feel like I've said this before, but it's the concept of not being, going up after 120, not being compared to Moshe Rabbeinu, but being compared to the best that you could be.
The best that you can be, right? Because you also have whatever your skill set is, and whatever family situation you have, and whatever children you have, and the children that you don't have, and then the people that you're around. Nobody has the same exact situation that anybody has. Like, you know, between what Moshe Rabbeinu experienced and what we experience, it's very different. But nobody else has the things that you dealt with. So as long as you're growing on your journey, then that is truth, and you should never feel like, oh, I'm just faking it. It's not fake it till you make it. It's act like the person that you want to become. So like have this vision of who you want to be, and this is like a great thing to put on your refrigerator. Like people, we do it with like weight loss, right? Like this is what I want to look like, right? And this is what I want to be. So do that also. Like I don't know if you want to like print out a picture of your Rebbitzin or whoever it is and be like, this is what I'm working towards and this is what I want to do. My son has this all the time. He hangs out in the sperm store a lot. And then, like, he just brings him all these farm, and, like, I started giving, like, a budget. I'm like, okay, this is how much we can spend on... Look, it was getting out of control. Like, with my daughter, I do it with clothing, and then I'm like, should I be doing it with farm? Also, I don't know, but I don't know. I heard my father, Shalom, would let my brothers, like, buy whatever they wanted in the farm store. So, like, after the Levaya, I was like, whatever you want. So he's, like, coming home, and now I'm, like, curbing it back a little bit. But, like, he would come home with all these things, and I'm like... Right, they have no room, and he's like, okay, so let's get another bookcase. I'm like, okay, well, now we get another bookcase. But I'm like, are you really going to be learning all these? He's like, well, I want to learn all these. And then I was like, I love that. Like, I'm so like, only have what you need, only buy what you need. But I want to be able to get there. So on his growth chart, he's like, I want to be able to learn all these farm, but we'll get there. Okay, so now let's understand a little bit about truth. So what is this midah of truth? And I think that truth, those of you who know me, is something I've been working on in my cheshbon hanefesh of like being emistic and tapping into like Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky when I was going through my whole avoda of it. But truth is, what is it? Ki hinei midas emes, hi midas social Yaakov. Now the trait of truth was Yaakov's paradigm. That's brought down from the Zohar. He says that according to Kabbalah that this idea of truth, the way that the Alter Rebbe is going to explain it, actually, he gives like a very nice mashal. He says basically it's like the middle path. Why is truth the middle path? If it was too much to the right or too much to the left, it wouldn't be able to hit everything. Okay, so like, I'm not good at math, so like, I don't know about y equals mx plus b and like slopes and things like that. But basically, the way that you have to imagine it is like a rod going straight through. Where's Tiferes in the body? Tiferes actually in the body is right here in the middle. Your right side is chesed, your left side is gvura, and then over here in the middle is that. Now that middle beam goes through everything. It hits your head, your torso, your legs, right? It's able to get through everything. And that's where this idea of I see Hashem in everything. I don't just see Hashem in shul, and I don't just see Hashem by tashlich when I'm throwing away my averos, and I don't just see Hashem, let's say, miracles of Hanukkah. I see Hashem when it doesn't look miraculous. And even when the world says everything is the way that it is. I actually overheard in shul, like by Shal Shadas Israel was telling me that some people were talking like politics, and they were like asking Rabbi Yossi about some politics, and he was just like, klipas, 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 klipas. He said it like 10 times. Like, I think Yankee was like in that conversation over there. And I was like, really? But like, I need to watch the debate. I need to know what's happening. And I know we were talking about this last week, and he was just like, klipas, klipas, like push it away. Like stop thinking that we need to know everything's happening in the world. Yesterday I was in the park, I'm like, they tried to get Trump again? And then I'm like, wait, klipas, like stop it. Like this is all like drawing me from a place that I don't need to know. It's not emes, it's not truth, it's not the middle. Klipas are something that are outside of the truth, right? So the beam that goes down the middle, it's the central bar. The way that he explains it, he says, Hanikra b'riach hatichon, hamavrach min hakatza arakatza, that it's referred to as a central bar. And by the way, you could think about that as think physically just of your body, like your spine, your central nervous system. It goes from your brain, goes all the way down, sends all the messages throughout your body, right? Meirum hamayos u'madregos ad sof kol dargan, from the highest elevation, and then it goes down to the lowest elevation. And that's what truth is. Truth passes through everything. Lies, they just like seem to just like float on one side, on one arena, on the other, but you don't get the whole story. Do you ever have a kid who like just doesn't tell the whole story? Like last night, my daughter's like, everybody's sleeping over. I'm like, everybody's sleeping over? Okay, fine, you can have a sleepover. And then all of a sudden I feel like, one was like, no, they're not sleeping over, they're not sleeping over, they're not sleeping over. And I'm like, where's the truth? Like, if it was true, then everybody would be sleeping over. But clearly it's not. So truth is something that goes from the top to the bottom. And everything that's true hits every single level of it. He's going through a lot of this concept of truth, and because constant truth means constant potential, like I'm constantly wanting to grow, I'm constantly wanting to be better on my playing field. And he says, Umidas emes hinachla bimli mitzarim, and the paradigm of truth is, it refers to as Yaakov, it's unlimited, no meitzar, no boundaries, nothing that's bounding it. The ein la shiur lamayla ad rum hamaylos, and it has no upper metaphysical limit, and it reaches to the highest elevation. So also, this truth that the Benoni experiences is his relative truth. It's what he's experiencing on his level. There are different levels of truth, and the Benoni experiences truth on his level. So remember, as long as you're growing on your path and you're moving upwards, you are experiencing real truth. And even if it feels like, right now it doesn't feel true, this is just as true. Okay, and then he says, look at the Benoni and compare him to his own truth, which is, in his world, it's constant because he can always be awakened. Who will always awaken the Benoni? The Nefesh Elokis, right? The Nefesh Elokis inside the Benoni is always like, don't worry, I'll help you. Just put me in the car first. Just wake up with me. Just remember that I'm
I was
here.
actually going to say the opposite.
Oh.
I was going to say the opposite. I was going to say the HRR is constantly waking you up to do, like, wrong.
Right. So they right. So he is, because he's always knocking on the door. He's always like,
that's
come in,
like the louder
come
voice,
in.
and you have
Right.
to like pull out the Nefesh Elokis to like fight against doing something that you know you shouldn't be doing.
Right. But deep
You know what I
down,
mean?
remember that the Nefesh Elokis is always going to be there to guide him to the truth, to the light. And by the way, the Nefesh Elokis could always revert it back. That's like one of the coolest things I've learned from like Tanya, is that there's always that retroactive thing. I think about this with when I was doing my kitchen, and we were going back and forth about like stone and versus Decton, which is like fabricated. And I remember like the guy who was telling me from the stone place, he's like, natural stone can always be reverted back to its original thing. Because I was always like, my island is not practical, like at all, like especially for the amount of children and grape juice that spills on my island, and like turmeric and hot sauce, whatever. I'm always like so nervous about it. But it's funny because it's real natural stone, I'm actually not nervous about it, because they told me that don't worry, it can always be restored to its original state, as opposed to the fake fabricated Decton that I have all over my kitchen, which is not real. And if something like hot sauce or turmeric, which I always cook with, goes into the counter and sits there overnight, it can't come out. It won't be able to be taken out. And I was like, oh my goodness, we're literally, our bodies, our neshamas, are natural stone. That means they could always be reverted back it could always tap back into that MS, even if it gets covered with hot sauce, which is like the worst thing, I think. I'm trying to think if there's any worse things. Grape juice is pretty bad also, like it soaks in. Apple cider vinegar. Black turmeric is really bad, and it ruins your nails. Like, do not, like, it's very bad. And I always cook with turmeric, and I'm like, why are my nails yellow? Oh, okay. So, but they can always be reverted back. That's how our neshamas can always be reverted back. So as much as of tshuva, right. That is the concept of tshuva, that it can go back to its original place where it never had anything wrong. So the kitchen guy's like, don't worry, every 3 years, we'll come, we'll do it. I'm like, yeah, I'm never going to call you again, but like, maybe one day you'll come down.
If it gets really bad, it'll come.
If it gets really bad. Yeah, no, literally the first week I spilled apple cider vinegar to get rid of fruit flies. Now I have a permanent vase like on my counter to block that. It's pretty bad. But that can also be brought back. Like, that can always be brought back. And it's something that, like, what?
I said we hope.
We hope, right? I know. Let's hope.
They say that.
They say they do. But it's the truth, because it is. It really is. They said they could bring it back. Okay. So, I hope so. It's fine. If not, the vase will be over there. Or I'll just, like, put Leviat's right there. He's always a product.
Of your kids making food
I know.
and spilling all over your counter,
Oh,
which
I
is
get
really
it.
kind of like, even Averos are like what built the Benoni to be who they are.
Right.
Able to overcome those things. Like even the turmeric
I
on the
know.
counter that can't be removed.
I know.
Still part of your trajectory.
I know. I'll like go off on a tangent on that for 1 second, just because like we're in Elul, and I was like, I'm starting this cooking show, so get ready for it. But I need like, I know, we're very excited. So I was like, I need Torah for the cooking show. So I was with my son today. He had to get his braces off, so we had like 2 hours. I'm like, okay, tell me something on tshuva. And he was, obviously it's a Torah from Rav Meyer, and he was saying that when it comes to doing tshuva, it's it's you get to, and I think we spoke about this in Tanya, is that you get to like taste what the Avera is for a minute, and then if you really understand Hashem is everywhere, then you know Hashem is in that Avera also. You get to like experience it and see it. But the second you do tshuva, you draw out just the good from that mistake, and then you just continue going further. What happens, the problem is that sometimes we get sucked into the other side, and then we get drawn into the Avera, and then we forget, and then we stop. But if you just face the Avera, or even maybe engage in it a little bit, and you get like a little nitzutz of it, a little spark of it, you're able to find Hashem in that area, in that arena, wherever you are, and immediately you could be like, hey, 1 second, and your nefesh kiss is like, come back, Faigy, and you're like, okay, I'm coming. And then, you know, like in a dream when like someone wakes you up, and then like it pulls you back in. You should never feel sad or bad about that experience that happened to you, because obviously you had to experience it to draw out whatever good was there. And if you could immediately go back and do tshuva, then you don't even have to feel bad. You're like, I experienced Hashem, I faced Hashem in like the darkest of places. I saw it, I pulled it out, and now I can continue. So I just thought that was a cool concept, but that's like a little bit similar, I think, to what you were just saying, right? Like that's what tshuva is. Tshuva is not, oh my gosh, I'm never going to sin. Especially we're like deep in the chapters of a Benoni who's constantly feeling these things. So if he for 1 second is like, oh, forget it, I'm just a faker, I'm just made a mistake, I ended up in this situation, I spoke badly about this, I was mean to this one, I wasn't nice to this one, right? You could get so hard on yourself and be like, forget it, I'm such a faker, there's no truth here. But if you recognize that once I stepped into that moment and I drew out whatever I could, or even if I did make a mistake, it's okay, I'm still growing and I'm still want to be better, and you pull back and then you just continue to grow. And that really is real MS. Like to me, that almost feels more MS maybe than the tzaddik's MS. No? Maybe I'm just biased because I'm like, I'm hoping I'll be a Benoni. But that's...
Well,
I mean,
Tzaddik's MS, he also has a Benoni moment. He has challenges. So I think like if we reflect on ourselves of like where we came from and where we moved, we're tzaddik in those domains.
right.
And we're Benoni where we're holding.
Right.
But a tzaddik's also Benoni for where he's holding.
Into a Yetzer Tov.
But that's time.
I think I may have just lost this. I was getting phone calls. Okay, I think it's still working. Right, so Tanya Tzaddik is different than that. But let's say what we're saying is that the Benoni, who sometimes thinks he's like, oh, I'm such a Tzaddik, we remind ourselves that he can be his Tzaddik. He stays his Benoni, but he can experience MS. He can experience real truth, something real. Don't think that it's fake.
So something that we overcame, we're not a tzaddik in that domain?
No, because it could always creep up on you. And we spoke about this last week, how your Nefesh HaBahamis gets stronger. When you get better, your Nefesh HaBahamis gets stronger.
I think
Like just like with weights. Like if you're like, oh, I could lift 50 weights, that's it, fine. No, now you have to lift 100. But 100's hard. But 50 was good. So maybe I'm a tzaddik in 50, but now I'm always faced with 100-pound weights. So it always will grow. It'll continue growing. It doesn't you don't put it to sleep. But Benoni doesn't put it to sleep.
You always have to check.
Maybe melatonin, I don't know.
Even
Like a little
if
bit.
you think that you accomplished something, don't get too comfortable in that, because if you're not checking yourself in that, it's very possible. If you're not going up,
You're going down.
down.
Right.
I always think of like tzaddik as like Yom Kippur, Nihila. Like you're not even interested in going home and eating. You're feeling so holy.
So that's it.
Like,
That's a Benoni who
that's
hit a
like,
tzaddik-like moment.
Tzaddik-like moment. The Rav always says that you should relish in those moments, and that should give you strength in all your other moments. But don't expect to always.
That's
do
kind
that.
of how Rabba described himself. That's how we start off this class, is that Rabba's like, I just view myself as a Benoni who's always davening. Like, that's how, but a Benoni that's always davening is basically a tzaddik. So we can do that. We can try and strive for that. But having those moments, right, like, and then remember it, and you're like, oh, I was able to do that. I was able to control myself. I didn't need food. I didn't need this. I didn't need that. I didn't need anything else. Besides it, oh, I could do this. And that gives you chizuk to keep growing on your growth chart. Okay, so this last idea, hold on 1 second. feel like we need to wrap this up over here because now we're going to talk about a little bit more about the Benoni. One more parak on the Benoni. Okay, so this is his relative truth. So he says, "V'chol milos u'madrigo shalamata hein ka'ayim magabe milos u'madrigo shalamayla mehen," and all the lower levels on the rungs of no significance when compared to the levels on the rungs above them. So what's relative? What's the Benoni's relative truth? This paradigm of truth is relative. What is true in his own context? Even if it's temporary, it can be the absolute truth. Okay, because we're saying truth is absolute. Truth is everything. Truth is something that goes from the beginning to end of all time, lasts forever. You don't need to make anything up. Everything that you see is real. I don't have to pretend. I don't have to be like, oh, looks like I have it all together. Or like, when people are like unhinged, right? Like, and they're like, no, I'm never like this, right? I'm not. But the truth is that the Benoni can achieve it on his own level, even if it doesn't seem like it's always from the beginning until the end. And it says he keeps going on, and he's talking about what does it mean that it goes from the higher levels to the lower levels? It means that somebody who can even go up and somebody who can even go all the way down, but everything that he is whole and is truth and is one. Okay, any questions? Okay, I know we started a little bit later for me tonight, but I will end at 9:30 because I feel like I have to stick to everybody's time. But no questions. Or you want to do it offline? Questions? No. Offline question? Okay, fine. The last thing, yes. So
just like that last line.
the idea of that, truth goes from the top to the bottom, right? And that means that it's absolute. That it's everything is almost like aligned. I think that's really what Tiferes is. This is why I always joke that I love the name Tiferes because Tiferes is harmony. It means that from the top to the bottom, everything that runs through it and flows through it is true. Just like the idea of the word emes, right? That emes is beginning, end, middle. Everything it is pleasant when it's like that, as opposed to somebody who is not true. Like the character, I don't like to talk about bad, but so that's why I'm focusing so much on what it means to be true. But somebody who's untruthful, they're all over the place. They're scattered because they can't find that flow within them where everything makes sense and everything's at ease. And somebody who's a Benoni struggles with that because on one side he looks like he's scattered, but on the inside he's striving for it to be straight and it to be one. But Tanya is just reinforcing it that even if it looks like he reaches the highest levels and he reaches the lowest levels, the Benoni that's growing can tap all those levels. It's not a slope like this, it's a slope like this, right? Not a slope. Does that make sense? Yeah, it's one. But the idea of being true, I think, with one on self is it really is on so many it comes out on so many levels in our relationship. I think that
Also to what you're saying about not being truthful, not literal someone who lies, but just not even. There's a point. I'll use myself as an example. I don't know, certain points in my life where I wasn't truthful with what I wanted in my life. I didn't know what I really wanted in my life.
Right.
I wasn't being truthful with myself. Yeah, and therefore, or even at random times where there's so much going on in your life, you're not being truthful with yourself about you're distracted and everything's just a mess. But when you're focused and you're in a more meditative state or more calm state, or when you're davening, you're able to connect to your own truth and to move that further.
I know. I think that when you see, by davening, it's when you daven for something, where do you go to when you daven? Why does the Benoni experience that in davening? Because where do you go to when you're davening?
Within yourself.
You go within yourself to that place of where who you really want to be. Unless you're it's a really rushed mincha and you're just davening just to whatever, to I don't know, we don't guys, I think a little bit more I have to catch a mincha. Let me daven mincha early so that I could be done and then I could just get through the rest of my day, right? I have that sometimes. I'm we want to go on a Chol trip. Everyone just find a minyan, daven mincha early so we don't have to worry about mincha later, right? That's not a truthful davening. But when you really do, when you take the time and you're davening and you're connect, you tap into the deepest place of you that really wants that. And then you're you remind yourself this is who I really want to be, even though sometimes it looks like I don't, or even sometimes I'm struggling with the things that pull me to another place. Maybe it's in business, or maybe it's at work, and maybe I don't see Hashem as clearly, or I don't even see myself so clearly. So that's why being authentic it comes out on I could go on this forever, for hours, about authenticity, because it really means being your full self in all places, accepting that sometimes you make mistakes, but also knowing that I just really want to grow. And it makes everything so much easier. When you're this is who I am, this is what I can handle, this is what I could do. A lot of times family drama could be avoided when you're just let me just say the truth. Let me just say it as it is. Let me explain to myself who I really am. I don't know why I'm thinking like family drama, but I'm trying to think of, because I'm thinking of like my kids, and this one said this, and this one said this, and she's never nice to me, and she's not really nice. I'm like, really? She does love you. Like, she really does love you. She's like, no, she doesn't. And I'm like, yes, she does. If you think about a time and a place when she was there for you in a real place in need, that was her real self. You got to see that real version of the person. Or you yourself, you're like, oh, that's the real me. That's who I want to be. Keep tapping into that, and that's how you become a better Benoni. Like, as much as it's nice to talk about the tzaddik and he doesn't really have any struggles, we're all Benonim here in this room. So we want to feel more Benoni every single day. And by connecting to that truth, then you could. Yeah.
Yeah, aren't humans designed to struggle and fluctuate? And like that's the purpose of our journey here. We're
Right.
not meant to just arrive at the top.
Right. I know. 100%. Even though sometimes I'm like, I just want to be there already, right? Like I have these like conversations where like it's a crazy day, and I was like driving one carpool to the next and dropping off this kid and then going to reading therapy, and I'm like, people are just like sitting on Central and Mom's Bay Street. Like, I want to do that. Like, I just want to be like that. And then I'm like, but my friends are like, that's not the point of life, Faigy. I'm like, but maybe it is, right? I have to remind myself all the time. It's nice, right? In theory, we know, the truth is we know that it struggles, but knowing it and knowing like, okay, I'm going to get a little bit better every single time, and I do, I'm going to be the real version. I'm going to be better. I'm going to get to be better.
If you're present within the struggle, then you're able to see it for what it is, which is ultimately MS.
Right.
But if you're always going on to the next thing and going to distractions or being pulled by distractions, sometimes distractions look holy also.
Right. What's a holy distraction?
Learning because it's intellectual.
Right.
Or even doing tzedakah and because someone else is watching.
Right.
Davening harder because someone else is watching.
Right.
It's a fictonious type of lifestyle.
Right.
Or even like you said before, being like what Jason was saying, like should be the person you want to be, but remembering like not like you said like put a picture of your round.
Yeah, I wouldn't put it.
I was gonna
tell you
Right.
No,
You know, like,
not our Ramsey,
you could do like,
right,
right.
but
Or you could
really
do,
it's your own self. It's if you're focused too much on
right.
on even the journey itself, like you just said before, like because that's a great way to be distracted is you just want to be at the top already,
right.
but really it's living in the present, and otherwise you'll get distracted by the future, and then again bringing yourself back to non-MSic way
Right.
of living your life, which is really
Right. There are like holy non-MS things, right? You're right. Yeah. Like when we were kids, it was like sticking your head in the sitter and like shuckling, right? Like the whole thing. I remember like when I was a kid, like in shul, I used to like just be like I know what I was saying. Like I would just like I have to say all those words. But now, as we get older, I realize like, okay, it has nothing to do with anybody else. It's hard.
Yeah,
It's hard
listen,
to like align
Torah
it with
is
yourself.
MS, but if it's learned and practiced the way it's meant to, then it brings Tiferes, and it brings that harmony within people, within a person themselves.
I
within
love that you say
families.
also harmony, because like the extremes of either one are like so dangerous. Like it's so dangerous to go one way or the other way and not tapping into like that harmony within you, and then it can be unsafe. And then it happens too fast, or it happens too slow, or like those distractions get to you. But being in harmony and being at peace with who you are, that's like there's that one song on, I think it's the Tama's playlist. Actually, my daughter asked me to play it yesterday in the Chumash. She's like, can you play that song? There's Nowhere I Need to Be. I'll send it again to the Tanya class tonight, to the chat tonight, about like there's nowhere I need to be, there's nothing I need to do, that everything that I have and right now, right where I am. I think she saw that I was like harried and like running and I had to go here and I had to go there, and she's like, Mom, play that song. And I was like, oh, thank you, like for reminding me, like there's nowhere I need to be but right here, and that's like harmony, and that's peace, and that's like calmness. That's like, it's like, I don't know, I've like experienced this a little bit when we were in Israel last time. We were like around people, like a lot of Mekubalim, people who just looked like your regular average Joe. We were like sitting in front of like Yeshiva of Rashash, and like these just regular people like walking in to like learn like in a Mekubal yeshiva. Some of them look like tractor drivers, farmers, like walking. And I noticed something, and like this Rav Avshi Weingot said, like the more mysticism you learn, the more calm you are. The more Kabbalah you learn, the more calm you are and present with who you are, as opposed to maybe learning something else where it makes you a little agitated, makes you excited.
Like the entire class.
Like the entire
the
class.
calmest people
Just
you've
like the
ever met.
calmest
So, like,
people, right?
chilled.
And he was saying, Rav Ashi always said that like the word for it is like ragua, which is like actually similar to the word reggae, which is like a kind of music that just mellows you out and chills you out. And he's like, that was the vibe of the Beis HaMikdash. Like when we were there, it was just like music playing, bringing carbonos, like eating meat, drinking wine, the Levium playing music, and like this calm feeling. I know.
It's alignment.
It's alignment. It's real alignment. It's like MS. It's like, like I said, like I could talk about this for hours. I don't want to keep you, but like it is so, when you feel it and you tap into it and you're like, this is me. This is the real me. This is what I want to do. I don't want to be doing anything else. I want to be following this path. It really brings a lot of comfort to the Beinoni, and the Baal Tanya gives you chizuk. And he's like, I daven for you 3 times a day and tell you guys like it's going to be okay. Don't think that it's fake. Don't think that it's real. It's the real truth. Okay, I'll end this here because we're really late.